It's America's birthday. It's Chris Towers' birthday. And amid all the celebration, we've got a weekend of baseball to break down. Let's get it started on Fantasy Baseball Today. Hello, everyone. Welcome again to Fantasy Baseball Today. I'm Scott White, joined by the aforementioned Chris Towers, whose birthday it is today. And you know, it's a big weekend for everybody, a big weekend with the holiday and all, but it's the biggest weekend of all for the guy who isn't here. Our host Frank Stamful. He entered into that strange and wonderful covenant known as marriage this weekend, and we're all very happy for him. Marriage is actually one of the things I enjoy talking about most. Like, I could do a whole podcast on marriage, probably. Chris, something that people may not know about you is you got married like really young, right?
Oh, I've been married forever. I've basically been married my whole life at this point.
How old were you?
I was 21, so it's coming up on 13. I think this year will be 13 years of marriage, which is wild. My marriage is in 8th grade.
The 21 number, I mean, I'm sure it surprises a lot of people. I mean, like that's kind of how I thought my life would go. Like, oh, I'll meet somebody, if not in high school, then in college, get married right afterward. No, it didn't exactly go that way. I had to wait all the way till 26, which I'm sure sounds really young to some people. But anyway, finally happened. Let's get into the baseball here. Big weekend. We didn't talk about it beforehand, Chris, but oh my goodness gracious. You got somebody you want to highlight this weekend?
Yeah. I'm going to go with, and we've been riding this roller coaster all year, I'm going to go with Charlie Morton, who had one of his best starts of the season. I think arguably, you could say his best start of the season, 7 shutout innings. Sorry, 7. Wait, what am I? Yeah, he had 7 innings. 10 strikeouts innings, against Cincinnati. Sorry, I pulled up his game log and it didn't show up. Yeah. He was exceptional. Really, really good. He's been really good for really his past 4 starts now. 9, 11, 5, and 10 strikeouts. And even if you go back to the start of June, 8, 12, 9, 11, and 5, he had allowed 8 runs in the first 2 starts of June combined. But overall, Charlie Morton has pretty much looked like himself. And that's what we expected to happen. Right? This was the expectation was, amid all of his struggles for the first couple of months of the season, we thought Charlie Morton was going to figure it out. And I feel pretty confident in saying that he has.
Yeah, double-digit strikeouts and 3 of 5. The whiffs were down in his previous start, so it was nice to see him get right back on the horse with maybe his most dominant start on year. I mean, he was threatening to throw a no-hitter deep into that game. Unfortunately, the bullpen blew it for him, so he didn't end up with a win. But yeah, I would say Charlie Morton, we're back to thinking of him as a must start, right?
Yeah, I mean, I joked, I think right around the beginning of June, that I moved Charlie Morton out of my top 40 finally. So congratulations on this run he's about to go on. And lo and behold, I think it coincided exactly with that 9 strikeout game too. So the timing was really, really stupendous there. And yeah, I'm viewing Charlie Morton as a top 30 starting pitcher rest of season. I think at least. I'm not sure exactly where, but I think, once we've seen him pitch like we thought he would, I mean, he was a top 20 guy for all of us coming into the season. So, yeah, I think he's right back to being a must-start guy again.
All right. My goodness gracious player from the weekend is Christian Javier of the Astros, who
that was the what are we referring to it as, the Olive Garden leftover breadstick,
the leftover
the
breadstick,
obvious one. Yeah.
Yes, I will take it because we said Charlie Morton had 7 1-hit innings. Well, so did Christian Javier on Friday with 14 strikeouts. In his previous start, he allowed no hits and struck out 13. So that's about as good of a 2-start stretch as any pitcher has ever had. And, if there was any doubt about Christian Javier keeping the rotation spot once Jake Odorizzi was ready to go. It's completely removed now. And in fact, the Astros actually addressed it over the weekend, what their plans are for Odorizzi. And they didn't say he's going to the bullpen, but they're saying they're going to use him as a sixth starter, at least to start out. So, you don't have to worry about Javier getting bumped or Luis Garcia getting bumped or, even
Jose Urquidy.
Yeah, even lately, Urquidy's really taken off. So yeah, everybody appears safe for now. And Javier, I think, it looks to me like he's emerging as, a must-start guy himself. Like he's really taken a step forward here. And it seems like he's just pounding with that fastball lately, which was arguably the only pitch he had in the minors, which is why he didn't gain much prospect traction, even though he was putting up ridiculous numbers down there. It's just a great fastball. And he's using it to maximum effect right now.
Yeah, he's been, you don't really, it's kind of one of those situations where there's not really much to say. He's been so absurdly dominant. The thing is, it's not, he's very fastball heavy, 62% fastball usage at this point is among the heavier fastball usage guys in baseball among starters, but he's also got that slider that he throws about 27% of the time. And he's got a 38% whiff rate with it, and he's getting really good results on balls and play with it. So yeah, he does a really good job of keeping the fastball up. He doesn't have like huge velocity. He averages 93.7, but it's a high spin rate pitch. He keeps it up in the zone. He gets a lot of whiffs. He gets a lot of weak contact with it. And he generates a decent amount of pop-ups with it. So, if you're wondering how Christian Javier does it, that goes a long way to explaining it. So, yeah, I'm pretty happy with what he's doing right now. The fact that his role seems pretty locked in, I think he's a top 50 starting pitcher for sure. Now we've gotten burned a few times this season by Eric
elevating
Lauer
guys
and
elevating guys too quickly. I think it's different in Christian Javier's case because we've seen him be nothing but impressive as a starter. Dominant might be going a little far because he's had consistency issues, some walk issues. But if they ever stuck with him in the rotation, I felt really good about his chances, and he's going beyond those expectations. All right, it was a big weekend.
A tough one. I've got Tarik Skubal. Oh, go ahead.
It was a big weekend for returning players, so we'll get into that now. Mookie Betts was back in the lineup for the Dodgers on Sunday, and he only missed 2.5 weeks with a cracked rib. Seemed like a hurried return for him, but he went 2 for 3 with 2 doubles, 2 walks in his first game back. Looked great. He was playing right field, his normal position, so they weren't babying him as far as that goes, and that makes me feel really confident about getting him back in my lineup. Aaron Ashby returned on Saturday from that strained forearm that nobody seemed particularly worried about. And it didn't go so well. He was facing the Pirates. He allowed 4 runs in 3 2/3 innings, 4 earned runs in 3 2/3 innings. Did strike out 6, but also allowed 2 home runs. He had 8 swinging strikes on 62 pitches. A pretty good rate. Velocity was fine. But he did get hit hard, 92.4 mile per hour average exit velocity. Again, to the Pirates, a team you would normally expect him to carve up, and the team he's facing this upcoming week for a second straight start. How do you feel about using Aaron Ashby for that start?
I think he's fine, but probably, more like a top 60-ish pitcher than someone who's a must start. So, I think, the RP eligibility certainly helps in your points leagues, but there are a few like 2-start RPs who might be ahead of him. But for the most part, I think he's fine, but definitely not a must start.
Yeah, so I had to keep him in my top 10 sleeper pitchers for this upcoming week just because there aren't that many to get excited about. But, this kind of puts that list in perspective. I think I'd avoid Ashby if I could coming off this start because I do think the profile itself is dominant. Elite ground ball rate, elite swing and miss rate. And maybe he was just rusty, or maybe that forearm injury is worse than anybody's letting on, and he's going to continue to struggle with that. So I need more assurances from Aaron Ashby before I start him again, at least in an optimal world. Drew Rasmussen also came off the IL this weekend. He had a pretty good start at Toronto, only went 4 2/3 innings, 1 earned run allowed, 2 strikeouts. There was a time when we were pretty excited about him, but like, are we viewing him as more of a fringy guy now? I added him to the sleeper pitchers list for this week. Had to take a couple others out, but not with a lot of gusto.
Yeah, I think he's pretty fringy, and I think part of it is, one, it's the Rays, so you never know how much of like the 68 pitches that he threw in this start were just the result of it being his first start, or whether they're gonna limit his usage moving forward. I think both are possible explanations. He was fine in this start, 9 swinging strikes, 25% CSW. I think that's okay, but there's definitely a capped ceiling to how useful Drew Rasmussen can be, unless he's just really, really good. You can still be really, really good for fantasy if you are throwing 85 to 90 pitches every start, but you have to, the bar is higher for that kind of profile. And I think Rasmussen's more like just a good pitcher and not a difference maker necessarily.
Jarren Duran of the Red Sox was back Friday. Remember, he missed that series because in Toronto because of his vaccination status. First game back Friday, 2 for 5, hit his first home run since coming up from the minors this year, and got another 2 hits on Saturday, batting .333 overall, 4 stolen bases already. Continues to hit leadoff for the Red Sox. And I'm finding it pretty hard to, forget or whether we should add him or not. He's only about 50% rostered, but I'm finding it pretty difficult to sit him in those 5 outfielder rotisserie leagues, knowing potential as a leadoff hitter and for stolen bases.
Yeah, I'm viewing him as pretty much a must-start guy in a 5 outfielder league. So, what that means is in a 12-team league, that's probably at least a top 50 outfielder, maybe top 45. But yeah, I don't know how much of an impact power hitter he's going to be, but I think the speed is going to be legitimate. And I think he's got enough pop that Jarren Duran is certainly someone I want in my lineup in a 5 outfielder league. Yeah.
All right. He's not back yet, but he's coming back Tuesday. Max Scherzer set to go against the Reds, aiming for 90 pitches and 6 innings. And it just so happens he lines up for 2 starts in his first week back. So, I don't know that anybody as high into Scherzer would be wanting to give that 1 start buffer back from the injury to just make sure everything looks solid. I mean, he's Max Scherzer, so probably just throw him in there, but especially given that there's another start on the docket. Nick Lodolo might be a different case. He had a long-term absence for a back injury. He's also expected back Tuesday, which would also line him up for 2 starts. That return had been delayed a few times already, and he's obviously not Max Scherzer. So, where do you stand on Nick Lodolo?
Yeah. So with Scherzer, I was just trying to look up his minor league rehab assignment. Like, he allowed four earned runs in 8 innings, but he struck out 14. So I think you can feel pretty confident in him. And I like the idea of like Max Scherzer being 88 at 87 pitches with 5 1/3 innings finished, and the manager trying to go take him out of the game. I'd like to see how that's going to go for the manager. So I'm going to say Max Scherzer, 90 innings. Seems like a pretty good bet, or 90 pitches.
Yeah, 90 pitches, yeah.
Lodolo, I think he's interesting, but he's not so much of a difference maker, at least yet, that I'm willing to throw. The potential remains intriguing. He's someone that I want, I think in like your 12-team or deeper roto leagues, I think he's worth having on your roster. But like, he wasn't pitching so well before the injury that I'm willing to just throw him out there, maybe in a 2-start week as a in a head-to-head points league, he might be, but I think I would probably give him a start to see how he looks.
Yeah.
He did have 18 strikeouts and 12 2/3 in his minor league rehab assignment, which is a good sign. I think the biggest thing is I wonder how whether the fastball is good enough yet. He actually does remind me a decent amount of Reed Detmers in a lot of ways. Really good curveball. The fastball command, not so much there yet. So definitely someone I want to see before I throw my lineup.
Yeah. And he had 19 strikeouts over 14 2/3 innings. And when he was up earlier this year, it's just, we haven't seen enough from Nick Lodolo, and certainly not coming off this injury. I was happy to pick him up, and I think he was available in one of my 15-team leagues, and I put in a claim for him. But I think most people listening can probably sit back and see how Nick Lodolo's return goes. Jacob Degrom made a return, and at the minor league levels, it was Class A. But he looked like Jacob Degrom. He struck out, what was it? 6 of the 7 batters he faced.
5 of the 6 batters he faced.
5 of the 6 batters he faced. 7 pitches recorded at 100 miles per hour or higher for Jacob Degrom. So that's exciting, and gives me some hope he'll be back sooner than later. I almost would prefer him not throwing 100 miles per hour, but because we certainly know he's capable of dominating.
As we saw in spring, it's not so much is Jacob Degrom currently healthy. That's not the biggest question for me. It's what are the chances of him staying healthy? And as we saw in the spring, it's not him currently being healthy, and I feel like he probably is. He was throwing 100 miles an hour today. First pitch he threw was 100 plus miles an hour. It's a question of how likely is he to stay healthy moving forward, and that remains a big question. But obviously at this point, you don't have to make the choice of whether to draft him in the first round, so it's much less of an urgent and pressing question. It's just when he's out there, I think he's going to be dominant.
Yep. All right. We also got Ronald Acuna back after missing a few games with a foot injury. He went 2 for 3 with a double in his return Friday, and then stole 2 bases on Sunday. So I would venture to say he's absolutely fine. Amazing starts from amazing pitchers. We've already talked about Christian Javier and Charlie Morton's starts. Tony Gonzalon had a great one himself Friday. 1 earned run in 7 2/3 innings against the Padres, 8 strikeouts. What was most notable about this start for Gonzalon, though, is his previous high for innings was only 6 1/3, and he went 7 2/3. As I said, I believe only half of his starts were 6 innings or more prior to this start. So the biggest thing holding me back from ranking Gonzalon like an ace or a near ace was just that he wasn't taking on that kind of workload. Well, maybe this is the start of it.
Yeah, the one thing I would push back on there is he only threw 92 pitches. So it wasn't like there was this dramatic change in the way the Dodgers used him. That's actually still that's tied for the second most pitches he's thrown in a start. He had 94 in the previous start. So I guess if you want to be optimistic, you could say there's an upward trend there, although he did have a stretch of 3 straight with 90 plus pitches at the end of May before not throwing 90 plus in 4 straight. So I think it's still the case that Tony Gonzalon is likely to be handled fairly carefully moving forward. And it's like what we're seeing right now is kind of like the Blake Snell Cy Young season, where he was able to pitch pretty deep into games, but it was mostly because he was pitching so outrageously effectively. Tony Gonzalon has gone 6+ innings in 7 of his last 9 starts. But like I said, during that stretch, he's thrown 90 plus pitches 5 out of those 9 starts, including no more than 94 in a start. So I think despite the fact that he is going to deep into games right now, he's averaging 6 innings per start over the last 9. It's mostly because he's got a 1.65 ERA and a 1.72 BABIP during that stretch. And I think Tony Gonsolin's really good, but I still think once he gets a little, once the luck balances out a little, and I'm not saying it's all luck, because like I said, I think he's really good. But I think he's probably going to be someone who is more like 6 innings than 7 innings most times out.
Which is not, not terribly uncommon. But I could see, I have him at my last rankings update. I have Tony Gonzalon 25th, particularly given the injury we saw from Frankie Montas on Sunday. We'll get into that in a bit. I could see getting Gonzalon into my top 20, like rounding out the top 20 rest of season. It looks like you have him 29th for now. Yeah.
But, I look at the guys, I'm moving him up right now, and I look at the guys ahead of him, and like Yu Darvish, I think that one's fine. Tony Gonzalon ahead of him. But like Charlie Morton, that's an interesting question. Charlie Morton versus Tony Gonzalon, because if we mostly think Charlie Morton's back to being the guy he was preseason, I don't have the innings concerns about him that I do. Or not the innings concerns, but the depth concern that I have about him. And I think in terms of which one's a better pitcher, I think it's really close. Morton's probably a better strikeout guy at the very least. So, then I've got like Lucas Giolito, Clayton Kershaw, Pablo Lopez, Luis Severino. Like, it is hard for Gonzalon, I think, to break through that crowd, especially when you look at his peripherals and they suggest, the FIP is more like low to mid 3s, which it's not surprising that a guy with a 1.54 ERA is outperforming his peripherals. And I think he profiles as someone who probably will. He has for his entire major league career, over 200 innings now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, when you're talking about the razor thin margins that exist at this level, that's a tiebreaker in his, that works against him perhaps.
All right. Spencer Strider. Man, a bad weekend for the Reds hitters and their strikeout totals. Because, Charlie Morton had that 10 strikeout game Sunday. The day before, Spencer Strider got 11 strikeouts, allowed just 1 hit himself over 6 innings. 24 swinging strikes on 93 pitches. His fastball was the best we've ever seen. It peaked at 102.4.
The hardest thrown fastball by a starting pitcher this season, I believe.
Wow.
Perhaps ever in the StatCast era, I'm not sure, but definitely this season was what I saw.
And the slider was up 1.6 miles per hour on average too. So I know it started out kind of bumpy, this transition for Strider, the rotation. But now, 4 of his last 5 starts have been just amazing. 2 11 strikeout efforts in there, a combined 3 earned runs in the 4 of 5 that were good. And 1, he gave up 6 runs. But Spencer Strider, I think, is verging on, I don't care who he's facing. He's in my lineup status himself.
Yeah, here's an interesting one from comparing him to a guy who had a very good start himself this week and who has, I think it's, a similar 4 out of 5 stretch now of really good starts. Shane Baz versus Spencer Strider. Shane Baz is my number 36 starting pitcher. Obviously has more of a pedigree, more of a track record. Who do you have ranked higher between Baz and Strider?
I have, let's see. As of now, I have Baz 6 spots ahead of Strider, which, that far down the pitching rankings, we're in the 35 to 40 range. That could go either way. I was expecting to say Strider, and I might after this. But yeah, they both look like crazy efficiency guys, like in terms of, okay, the ratios are going to be awesome, but there is the threat of them, potentially coming up short in the innings, both start by start and over the course of the rest of the season.
Yeah, Strider has thrown at least 92 pitches in 4 of his last 5. The one outlier was that start against the Giants where he gave up 6 runs in 3 2/3 innings, and he didn't get pulled from that because he was at some kind of pitch limit. He just got hit hard. So he's actually thrown 106 pitches in an outing in that stretch, plus 92, 95, 93. So pretty good pitch totals from a young pitcher.
All right, I'm going to rattle off 3 more big pitching performances from the weekend, and you can tell me what's most notable about them if you'd like. Luis Castillo of the Reds, he went up against Charlie Morton, allowed just 1 run in 7 innings, 6 strikeouts. He got 10 swinging strikes just on his 4-seam I'm sorry, he got 8 on just his four-seam fastball. Again, 51, thrown 51% of the time, leaning on that more than his sinker, and it looks like it's a pretty good swing and miss pitch on its own. Framber Valdez had a 13 strikeout effort against the Angels. Now, he did also walk 5, but only 2 earned runs in 6 innings. That makes 13 straight quality starts now for Framber Valdez. And Robbie Ray struck out 12 against the Athletics on Sunday. One earned run in 6 2/3 innings. He had 27 swinging strikes on 107 pitches, including 11 on the slider, which he threw 48% of the time, more than usual for Robbie Ray. It seemed to be a good plan against the A's on Sunday. Anything to point out with those 3?
I think Castillo is probably the most noteworthy there, just because Ray, like, he's been trending up, and I feel pretty good about him. I think he's back inside my top 25 now. But obviously, matchup against the A's also makes things look a little better. The Angels just were terrible this weekend. The Astros made them look ridiculous, but Framber Valdez is just really good. I don't think he's a swing and miss pitcher all of a sudden, but we know who he is, and what he is a very convincing Dallas Keuchel impersonator at this point.
He gets better strikeouts than Keuchel. He's not a huge swing and miss
and doesn't
guy.
have as good of control. So, not quite the same thing, but the end result is, I think, fairly similar to Pete Keuchel. But Castillo is really interesting because that's 2 starts in a row, I believe, where he's gone really heavy with the four-seam fastball. That's not typically the fastball that he relies on most. Yeah, he had 46% usage with that in the previous start. And that is a much better swing and miss pitch for him. I don't know necessarily if you want to say it's a better pitch than his sinker, but the whiff rate on the four-seam fastball has been really, really good. Trying to pull it up. So far this season, 45% with the four-seam fastball. It's actually interesting. His changeup hasn't been nearly as effective in terms of swings and misses for him this season. 27. I think he only had 1 of them with the changeup today, maybe 2. But yeah, the four-seam fastball was the primary swing and miss pitch, and it's an interesting question whether he should continue doing this or whether he will. But Luis Castillo, he got off to a bit of a bumpy start to this season. I think there was a lot of, here we go again. Luis Castillo is overrated, blah, blah, blah. He's got like a 2.5 ERA since the start of June. Or since actually his last start in May. May 31st, he had a 10 strikeout, 6 shutout inning start against Boston. 7 starts since then. He's allowed 12 earned runs. He's had 48 strikeouts with, I believe, 18 walks. So I'm feeling pretty good about Luis Castillo. He's in that top 36 discussion for me.
So those were some good pitching performances from this weekend. We got to get into the bad ones now and talk about whether it's time to move on from some pitchers that we've been excited about at one point in time. And unfortunately, the most notable of these is Tarik Skubal, who was awful again against the Royals, no less. 5 earned runs in 4 2/3 innings, 3 walks versus 1 strikeout, allowed a couple homers. His velocity was down more than a mile per hour on everything, which is, velocity hasn't been so much the issue with him during these struggles. But now 5 bad starts in a row, 9 ERA, 1.91 whip, 5.5 walks per 9 and 2 home runs per 9. And that's, as we talked about the last time Skubal had a bad start, that's where I see the clearest difference is that, his control was pristine early on, and he probably had some good home run luck. And now both of those have turned dramatically, and just everything is going horribly for him. So what did you see here, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at, I think it's a, command thing with Tarik Skubal. When you look at, the heat charts for his pitches, he throws a lot of sliders in the middle of the zone, and the fastball, he gets a lot of those in the middle of the zone as well. And, I think the velocity being down in this one probably exacerbated the issues, but I think it's probably just true that, what we saw last season was when he's not perfect, he gets hit really hard, especially with his fastball. And that was not so much an issue early on in the season. And I think it was probably a case where he was simply, locating his pitches really well.
Right.
But
Right.
since the start of June, if you count, even before this start, which was a bad start, he had a 340 expected WOBA allowed overall. Last season, that was 357, so a little better than the last season. But yeah, you can see he's starting to fall back into some of the bad habits from last season, getting hit really hard, giving up too much loud contact. And yeah, if the control's not there, I don't see what makes him stand out. So it's frustrating.
Well,
and there's not really
I wonder
like a
if
specific thing I can point to and say that's why. It's just he's kind of pitching worse.
Yeah, I mean, I wondered with the velocity being down this start, okay, maybe there's something health-wise going on. Of course, an injury isn't the only reason velocity might be down. It could be something mechanical, which would also impact his control. But obviously fortunately, I should say, our last show, Friday, we talked about Skubal as a risky, but you kind of have to do it, two-start pitcher. Well, that he started on Sunday, so now he's not a two-start pitcher next week, and you could just sit him and be the better for it. I don't think we're at the point, though, where even in like a 12-team league, we consider dropping Skubal, are we?
I would prefer not to, but he's definitely more like he'd been in the top 40 and moving into the top like 30-ish range. I'm probably dropping him back closer to 50 now.
I did, this next pitcher, Mackenzie Gore, I did give a thought in one of those 12-team head-to-head points leagues with only 21 roster spots. I wanted to add an extra hitter, and I did give a thought to dropping Mackenzie Gore. I ultimately didn't do it, but I at least thought about it. His latest start at the Dodgers on Sunday, actually kind of a gutty performance. He ended up only allowing 1 earned run in 5 2/3 innings, but 4 walks versus 3 strikeouts. That gives him 15 walks versus 11 strikeouts in his past 4 starts. His velocity was again down in Sunday's start, 1.4 miles per hour. It's been down throughout that 4-start stretch. And I just think some of those problems he was having, he kind of lost his mechanics in the minors last year. You saw velocity go down, you saw control get worse, and maybe it's happening again to a guy who relies on a big leg kick and some complicated mechanics.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that we've seen from Mackenzie Gore so far this season is just that the secondaries aren't quite there consistently enough. Like he gets decent swing and miss rates on the curve, the changeup especially, but he doesn't throw it to lefties. So it's really like a specialty pitch for him. And so I just think like right now he's just kind of not a fastball only guy, but the fastball is the only pitch that he seems to have a lot of confidence in. And it's hard to pitch like that at the professional level at this point. So I think Mackenzie Gore still has some, I think he's still got some seasoning left is the way I would put it. Like he's still figuring it out, and there's still obviously a lot of talent as we saw the fastball. I mean, for the fact that he's so fastball heavy, the results on the fastball are actually pretty good. Expected WOBA in the low 300s, whiff rate around 20%. None of that's elite, but given his overall struggles,
he started out gangbusters
for that pitch. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know how much of that is carrying over.
He's still, I think, searching for that second and third pitch to feel comfortable with. I think he's still developing those pitches, and I think he's gotten figured out a little bit.
I think a sign his fastball might not be right is that to have that gutty performance against the Dodgers Sunday, he threw it only 50% of the time. 50% of the time is a lot for most pitchers, but usually he's up over 60. So he relied on the secondaries more, and this Dodgers start and managed to get through it okay in a real world sense, but certainly not in a way that inspires much confidence in fantasy. Okay, other pitchers who let's do the drop-o-meter for these guys. So Corey Kluber, his numbers have been decent this year, particularly in the 8 starts prior to Friday's start. 2.70 ERA, 0.92 WHIP, 8.1 K per 9. But on Friday at Toronto, he allowed 5 earned runs in 3 innings, struck out only 1 through 49 pitches. Didn't last very long. And, where do things stand on Corey Kluber? How likely would you be to drop him on a scale 1 to 10?
I've been pretty skeptical of Corey Kluber throughout. I don't know if I've ever moved him inside of my top 70 starting pitchers, even when the results have been pretty good. So I have no trouble dropping him. I think even a 12-team roto league, he's not at all a must-roster player. So I would say a 7 or 8.
I did drop him or at least I put in a bid to drop him. Hasn't gone through yet necessarily, but in the 12-team points league podcast league, I'm okay cutting bait on Corey Kluber. Specifically, would you drop him for Jose Urquidy, who we talked about earlier? He had his third straight quality start on Saturday, gave up 1 run in 6 innings against the Angels, allowed 2 hits, struck out 8. Angels lineup really struggling right now. We saw what Javier and Framber Valdez did to them, but Urquidy was great against them as well. 17 swinging strikes on 104 pitches, including 10 on the fastball, combined 3 earned runs in 19 innings over those past 3 starts. Are we on board with Urquidy in general, and will we drop Kluber for him?
I think it's fair to be skeptical that Urquidy is going to be a starting caliber player moving forward, or a must-start player if you want to frame it that way. But he's got the athletics in his next start. So I feel more confident starting him than I do Corey Kluber in the next start. So that is enough to make me drop Corey Kluber.
He is among my sleeper pitchers for next week is Urquidy. It's not clear. Let's see. I think I have him going against the Royals, but it may be, maybe it'll one way or the other. It's going to be a good matchup for Urquidy. Okay. Next up on the drop-o-meter, Rolanzi Contreras. We loved his potential when he got a spot in the Pirates rotation. Against the Brewers on Friday, though, 7 earned runs in 1 2/3 innings. Just an out-and-out disaster. Allowed 3 home runs. And that was after having 5 walks in his previous start. 2.76 ERA prior to this blow-up against the Brewers. So you could argue he was pitching pretty well overall, but he'd been getting hit pretty hard. What do you think of Rouenzy Contreras? You ready to move on?
Yeah, he hasn't gone a full 6 innings, I think, in any start this season. He hasn't really had a good start since June 4th, so almost a full month now, since that 8 strikeout game against the Diamondbacks. So yeah, I think it's fine. Drop Contreras. I think he's probably close to a 10 on the drop-o-meter.
Would you drop Rolanzi Contreras for David Peterson of the Mets, who wasn't facing the Marlins this time? Remember, we were giving him a hard time in his previous 2 starts when his whiff rate shot way up, 19 whiffs in each of his previous 2 starts, but both were against the Marlins. He's facing the Rangers on Friday, struck out 10, walked none in 6 innings, 3 runs allowed, 2 home runs. So it was barely a quality start, but the strikeouts, the whiffs, they remain high for Peterson, and it seems to coincide with increased slider usage, a pitch that gets a lot of whiffs from him in general. Are you more excited about the potential of David Peterson now than Rolanzi Contreras, and is he somebody just looking to add in general?
So I'll probably take a similar tack to the one I did with regards to Kluber versus Urquidy, that Peterson gets the Marlins in his next start. And so if nothing else, I would rather start Peterson than Contreras for that start. But yeah, I think what we're seeing right now is the development of that slider and the increased usage of it makes Peterson look a little more interesting. I don't know if I trust him to be, even in like a 12-team roto sense, a starting caliber player, but I think he's a fine streamer. The way he's pitched against Miami the past 2 starts, how much they've struggled against lefties. There's always a little bit of a concern when a pitcher faces the same team like 3 times in 4 starts, just because hitters do tend to perform better the more they see a pitcher. So it's possible that he turns back into a pumpkin here, but I feel pretty good about him right now. So at least in the short term, Peterson seems like a pretty useful player.
Okay, drop-o-meter for Michael Lorenzen, who allowed 8 earned runs in 3 innings at Houston on Friday. So the Angels didn't have it going hitting-wise or pitching. It's been a struggle for Lorenzen lately. I originally had him in my 10 sleeper pitchers for this upcoming week because he's going against the Orioles, but after this start, I just couldn't. I had to take him out.
And I think I think that's the right call. Like he's someone that when you look under the hood, you can talk yourself into Michael Lorenzen being a pretty good pitcher. Like he's got pretty good, decent whiff rates on his fastballs with good rates. He's got good whiff rates on the slider and changeup. But
Good
then
ground
like you
ball
add
rate.
it all up, and it's kind of the whole is just not as good as the sum, or whatever the sum is not as good as the parts, whatever the saying would be. I think at this point he's probably just an RP, a SPARP for head-to-head points leagues. He's not someone outside of a head-to-head points context that I have much interest in. And even then in the 12-team league, like there are enough SPARPs right now that I think Lorenzen is pretty fringy.
So I don't see Lorenzen as very exciting, but we haven't seen Marco Gonzalez as very exciting either. And yet he had his 6th quality start in 7 chances Friday against Oakland, 2 earned runs in 6 innings, struck out only 2, allowed 8 hits. In that 7-start stretch where he has 6 quality starts, a 2.84 ERA, a 1.15 whip, and also 4.5 K per 9. So, yeah, I mean, good for him, I guess, for stringing together all these quality starts. But, like, you can't trust somebody who strikes out so few batters, can you?
No, I don't think trust would be the word that you would use there. I mean, but Marco Gonzalez does have these stretches. I mean, he's going on now 5 years in a row with an ERA of 4.00 or better. Now, the problem is 3 of those 5 years, it's been 4.00, 3.99, 3.96. And those are useful numbers. I don't want to make it seem like you can't get value out of a 3.96 ERA. The problem is he's kind of a 1.5 category pitcher. He usually doesn't have great whip. Even last season when he had a 3.96 ERA, he had a 1.17 whip, which is good but not elite. This year it's 1.32. He doesn't get any strikeouts, as we talked about. And he's a decent wins pitcher. I mean, he won 10 in 25 starts last season, so that's like a 13 win pace over a full season. This year he's got 4 in 16, so that puts him on an 8 win pace roughly. So I think he's probably like, even when the ERA is good, that's probably all you're getting out of Marco Gonzalez, which means he's a decent streamer and a guy to keep around. But if you find someone exciting on waivers, you drop him. It just depends on, like, I don't know if David Peterson is that guy. He might be, but also, I'm not sure I would drop Gonzalez for Peterson. So it's more situational. I think he's situationally useful.
Okay, so you don't know. Okay, well, we'll follow up with that in a second. But another bad outing from this week, and Ross Stripling allowed 3 earned runs in 4 2/3 innings against the Rays on Sunday, 7 hits. He had looked decent in previous starts. His overall numbers were pretty good, but I don't think we were ever buying into him that hard. So this is all the excuse you need to move on from Ross Stripling. So of these pitchers, good and bad, do we drop? Do we add? Go through the whole list here again. Corey Kluber, Rolanzi Contreras, Michael Lorenzen, Ross Stripling, David Peterson, Marco Gonzalez, Jose Urquidy. If you could only have one, who would you pick?
Of that whole group.
That whole chunk of 7 names. I would go David Peterson. I would want to take
including Urquidy?
We're including Urquidy. Yep.
I think Urquidy would be my favorite of that group. And then Gonzalez and Peterson in some order. I think they're pretty close.
Okay. All right, let's go on to news and notes here. First, I meant to say this at the top, a little programming note, just in case you're feeling bad that we're working on major holiday. Don't worry, we're not actually going to be working on the day. And because of that, right after this show, Chris and I are going to record a mailbag show to air Tuesday so that we don't have to record one Monday night for you. And should be a lot of fun. And then Frank will be back for Wednesday's podcast, and it'll be a joyous occasion for all. Okay, news and notes here. Frankie Montas left Sunday's start at Seattle with tightness in the back of his shoulder. He lasted only 1 inning. Velocity was way down. Tightness in the back of the shoulder. It sounds like one of those.
Not where you want tightness.
It sounds like one of those lat issues for Montas. That's not an official diagnosis, but obviously Don't plan on using him this week because I'm
Yeah,
expecting an IL stint.
Frankly, I mean, we're a little over 4 weeks from the trade deadline. I think the trade deadline's actually in August this year. I think it's August 2nd, the way the calendar lines up, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, the July 31st is on a Sunday, so it's either the 1st or the 2nd this year, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, this is one that, Frankie Montas seemed like a prime trade candidate, and all of a sudden now it looks like Frankie Montas probably, there's at least a chance that they won't be able to trade him because of this injury. So that's a concern. Obviously I don't want to get too far ahead of it, but definitely concerning the way that went down.
Yes, 6 p.m. August 2nd is the trade deadline this year. Another concerning injury here. Juan Soto was removed Sunday with calf tightness. He'll be reevaluated Monday. That's not necessarily a bad injury, but without any updates heading into the new week, in those shallower leagues, I'd give some thought to playing it safe.
Yeah, I would hope that you don't have to sit him, but, obviously, unless we get some kind of update, it's a risk.
Xander Bogaerts was spiked on a steal attempt Sunday and removed with a thigh laceration. I don't think that one's going to be so bad to keep him out, but it's possible. I would, without hearing anything more, I'd lean towards starting Bogaerts. Yeah. Ranger Suarez was placed on the IL with back spasms, removing him from the 2-start pitchers for this week. So you don't have to think about using him. Kevin Gausman this was a scary one. Left when he was hit by a comebacker in the ankle Saturday, but x-rays were negative. They haven't verified that'll make his next start yet, so maybe play it safe with that one. Jack Flaherty won't throw for 2 to 3 weeks, which I think on an aggressive timetable, mid-August is about the best we're going to get from Flaherty when we see him again.
I dropped him outside of my top 80 for the rest of the season. I think he's droppable if you don't have the IL spots for him.
I believe I did as well.
He looked
79.
bad. Yeah, he looked bad in his return. I have questions about his performance anyway. So, yeah, I'm not particularly optimistic about Jack Flaherty rest of season.
Anthony Desclafani is back on the IL with ankle inflammation.
Anthony Desclafani's done for the season, I saw.
Okay.
He's having ankle surgery, and then, his season's done.
Tyler Stevenson, who's been out since June 9th with a fractured thumb, will begin a rehab assignment Monday, and the catcher position could use him. Chris Bassett was scratched Friday and placed on the IL with no injury designation. So probably sit him this week, but maybe he'll be back after that. Jorge Solaire was placed on the IL with a back issue. He's been nursing for a while. Chris Sale
for John Birdie, who I believe started at left field in the first game after Solaire's injury, and he gets Noah Syndergaard this week. So if he gets on base against Noah Syndergaard, he's stealing 2 bases at least.
Okay,
I'm locking
on one
in.
pitch, stealing 2 bases on one pitch.
Yeah, just don't hit a double.
Chris Sale will start for AAA on Wednesday in what could be his final rehab outing at long last. We might get a Chris Sale payoff. He has to go 5, I think, for that to be the case, but I'm going to bet he will. So hopefully next week we'll be able to use him in fantasy. Not this upcoming week. Chris Taylor fouled the ball off his foot Saturday. X-rays negative, but he sat Sunday. Kyle Farmer hit in the hand by a Spencer Strider pitch on Saturday, out of the lineup Sunday, but x-rays negative. Adam Duvall hit by pitch on the hand, x-rays negative, but out of the lineup Sunday. They're 3 pretty fringy players. It could go either way, how much they play this week if they end up, obviously it's good that x-rays are negative. Yeah. But if you have alternatives for Chris Taylor, Kyle Farmer, and Adam Duvall, I would recommend playing it safe with them. Eloy Jimenez possibly back this week after that long absence for a hamstring injury. Could serve as the DH at first. Would you risk putting Eloy Jimenez back in your lineup, Chris?
No, I think I'm okay giving him a week just because I wouldn't be surprised even if he does return this week. They play it safe. He doesn't play every day. Especially in a points league, he's not such an impact player because he doesn't walk very much that you're going to miss out on too much, hopefully. So yeah, I would sit him. Let him prove he's healthy.
I would also sit Jesse Winker, who he had his suspension reduced from 7 games to 6. I don't know what the difference is. But he was in the lineup both Saturday and Sunday, which I thought was odd.
One.
So yeah, well, the difference is 1, but like what? Oh, well, you know what? It wasn't as bad as we originally thought. Let's give you another game. I don't know. I don't know exactly how that works, but I don't know why he kept playing. Like if the appeal's been heard, I don't know. But he's presumably he's going to start serving him this week any day. Yeah. Okay. A couple quick notes here. Fernando Tatis looks like he could return in the outfield rather than shortstop. I think he's eligible at both places, anywhere you'd play fantasy baseball. And he's still a couple weeks away from swinging, but that's the latest on Tatis. Okay, let's get into some hitters. We are quickly running out of time. And so let's try and do this quickly. Let me just highlight a few big performances worth highlighting from the weekend. Nolan Aronado was the hitting star of the weekend. He hit for the cycle on Friday and then hit 2 home runs on Saturday. So big weekend for Nolan Arenado, and he's a stud. Jeremy Pena, 4 for 5 with 2 home runs on Sunday. It was his 6th game since returning, and he'd struck out a lot in the games leading up to it. But hopefully he's shaking off the rust now. I think a big performance like this is all the encouragement you need to keep him active in those shallower leagues. CJ Cron on Sunday hit 2 home runs, had 6 RBI. He keeps on keeping on. Rhys Hoskins, 2 for 3 with a home run in the double on Sunday. And what's worth noting there is, we haven't talked about it much, but last 26 games, Rhys Hoskins batting .348 with 9 homers, 17 walks versus 21 strikeouts. I don't think he's discovered this new potential or anything. I think he's just hot, but it's nice to see his numbers get back to where we expected them to be all along. How are you feeling about Marcelo Zuna these days, Chris? He homered twice on Sunday, gives him 16 for the year, which is, 30-plus homer pace. But he's only batting .215 since April. The batting average hasn't gotten better since that awful month. It's only gotten worse. Is Marcelo Zuna, do you think he's going to be must-start rest of season?
His career has really been defined by these really, really impressive expected WOBA stats. And this season's no different. He's at 366. League average is 316. He's been really good. If you go by that metric, unfortunately, 2 years in a row, we're massively underperformed his expected stats. He's still not striking out all that much. He's still hitting the ball hard. So I do think Marcelo Zuna is going to be better moving forward than he has been so far. But for what it's worth, he has underperformed his expected WOBA for his career. 239 is his WOBA. 362. Sorry, 339 is his WOBA for his career. 362 is his expected WOBA. So he is one of the more consistent underperformers in that regard. So you can't just point to the 366 and say, well, he's going to do that. Even without the caveats about that stat not having as much predictive value this season because the ball's not traveling as far. But yeah, I still think like something like what he did in 2019 when he was a disappointment but hit 241 with 29 homers, like I still think that's well within the realm of possibility.
Okay, Isaac Paredes. This is a hitter who's still out there in quite a few leagues, and he was somebody with his triple eligibility who I was tempted to add over Mackenzie Gore in that shallow points league. I wanted a versatile bat for my bench. I'm starting to buy into him just a little bit. He homered in both games of doubleheader Saturday. That brings him to 13 and 127 at bats. Had another 2 hits Sunday. He has more points per game. Just looking at second base where you'd probably need him the most. Or you know what? Probably need him the most at third. But just comparing him to other second basemen, he has more head-to-head points per game than Trevor Story, DJ LeMahieu, Luis Arias, certainly somebody like Ketel Marte. And what I've noticed about Isaac Paredes, we've mentioned he makes a lot of contact, but the contact on average isn't particularly hard. He pulls the ball in the air, or at least in these 127 at-bats, he has pulled the ball in the air a ton. His pull rate on fly balls is 48.9%, which is ridiculous. And that is a way that a hitter who doesn't impact the ball very hard can hit for a lot of power, as we've seen from Paredes. I'm not saying he can sustain this pace, but I think he can remain, depending how much the Rays stick with him. That's always the question for anyone who plays for them. I think he can remain useful if that is part of his hitting profile.
Yeah, I mean, here's an amazing stat about Isaac Paredes. He has a 209 BABIP this season, which is unbelievably low. And that's the kind of thing where you think, well, wow, okay, he has a little bad luck there. His expected batting average is actually 27 points lower than his actual batting average, despite that. So,
well, because the contact's not very hard.
Yeah, like the quality of contact, it's not very hard. He's hit very few line drives. He hits a ton of pop-ups. Like he almost has as many infield fly balls as line drives this season, which is really, really bad. So yeah, I think like the profile, because he's a lot of contact and a lot of pull side air contact, he can continue to hit for some decent pop. I think that's probably all Isaac Paredes is going to do. And so it might be a situation where he ends up with 25 home runs by the end of the season, but I think he's probably going to hurt you everywhere else. So I'm not particularly excited about it, but I'm not going to say he's without utility.
Rowdy Tellez hit another home run over the weekend after a couple 2-homer games last week. Is he back to must roster in your eyes, Rowdy Tellez? I think for me, in the categories leagues, he is.
Yeah, it's tough to call him must roster just because I think what he really is just streaky.
Yes,
I think he's going to be someone who is good for power. Yeah, so I don't think he's going to be someone that you feel good about every week production, but like at the end of the season, he's going to hit 30 home runs probably, or somewhere close to that with decent batting averages. And so, if
the
if
RBI
you're in a
totals,
set it and forget it kind of situation, the
RBI totals remained very high too, or at least it just started out so high that it hasn't had a chance to normal. So when you just look at the raw home runs and RBI, you're like, how could anybody not have Rowdy Tellez? But of course, the experience has been more up and down than that. Eduardo Escobar has homered in 3 straight, all 3 games this weekend, up to 9 for the season. He's still batting just .228 with a .694 OPS, but this is a guy who had 28 home runs last year. He had 35 in 2019. And when you look at the StatCast data, not a lot of differences from that 28 homer season last year, where he was borderline must start, I would say, Eduardo Escobar. K rate's up a little, but not enough to think, he can't rebound from it. I don't know. I've been waiting for Eduardo Escobar to come roaring back. Maybe this is the start of it, but I've been reluctant to drop him in some rotisserie leagues. Let's see here. Who can?
Yeah, I mean, okay. I think he's. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's go to Fronmel Reyes, who has 2 home runs in his last 3 games, but he also has 21 strikeouts in 11 games since returning. That's a 49% rate. So, like, it's just getting worse, right? All the strikeouts for Fronmel Reyes. I don't know. I think he's probably going to be a pretty good source of power, but man, if he can't get those strikeouts under control, he's going to be a disaster for your batting average and probably lose playing time.
Yeah, I mean, he's hitting .268 with 3 homers in 11 games since coming off the IL, which is pretty good. But it's just the .268 is very inflated given the high strikeout rate. So yeah, it's hard to trust him too much. But I do think he'll continue to hit for power, and I don't think he'll strike out 49% of the time moving forward. But he's above 40% for the season, right? I mean, it's been really bad all year.
It's been awful, and like I said, getting worse. So, even in some 5 outfielder roto leagues, I don't know that you have to stick with him. And it kind of reminds me of Joey Gallo a little. Gallo started to lose a lot of playing time, so it's even worse in his situation. But Fronmel Reyes could end up going the same way. Definitely something to keep an eye on. We have a lot of bullpen happenings this weekend. We're going to have to go through them quickly, unfortunately. Aroldis Chapman was activated Friday, and he worked the 7th inning of game 1 of a doubleheader over the weekend, allowed 2 earned runs, walked 3 without getting an out. Clay Holmes then got a 2-out save in game 2 of that doubleheader. And the plan for now is Chapman to work at some point in the last 3 innings of the game, which means the plan isn't for him to be a closer, at least not strictly. So definitely hang on to Holmes. Try to hang on to Chapman too, because I think in the long run, it's unclear how this is going to play out. For the Phillies on Friday, Brad Hand worked the 9th for the save, with Sir Anthony Dominguez working the 8th. Now, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, and Juan Yepez were due up in the 8th. So they used Dominguez against the middle of the Cardinals lineup. It may have been a leverage issue there, Hand getting the save instead. On Saturday, Dominguez was the one who worked the 9th, but he allowed a home run for the loss. It was in a tie, so, it wasn't a save situation, but Hand had worked the previous inning. So the Phillies flipped right back on Saturday after going Dominguez beforehand on Friday. I still think Dominguez is the guy to have there, but maybe in some 15-team leagues, Hand might be worth picking up for saves. Emilio Pagan, this is for the Twins. Emilio Pagan has officially been moved to a lower leverage role. Manager Rocco Baldelli said, he's going to pitch earlier in the game and potentially when we don't have the lead and things like that. So he got a win over the weekend, looked pretty good in the inning he did pitch. I don't know that he's out completely, but certainly if Yohan Duran is out there in your leagues, like, he's been far and away the better pitcher for the Twins, and hopefully this is his opening finally. For the Dodgers, Craig Kimbrell was terrible again on Sunday, allowed 3 earned runs and 0.1 innings, got hit by a comebacker, left the game. Scans on his back were negative, so it doesn't sound like he's going to miss a lot of time with that. And Dave Roberts also said he's not even considering removing Kimbrell from the closer role, even though he has a 4.78 ERA. Not sure who he'd go with anyway, because Daniel Hudson's out for the year. For the Braves, of course, Kenley Jansen's still out with that irregular heartbeat. Will Smith worked a scoreless 9th for the save on Saturday, with AJ Minter working the 8th. So they both came in, and Smith was the one who got the save. Minter did come in on Sunday to handle a tie in the 9th inning, a spot a closer would typically be used in. And he ended up blowing the game, allowed 4 base runners without recording an out. Didn't get much help from the defense, it's worth pointing out, but still unclear how the Braves are handling those two. But I think if you're just looking for saves, advantage is Will Smith right now. Liam Hendricks, should have mentioned this at the top of the show. He's due back Monday, so you can ignore the 2 saves Kendall Graveman got this weekend for the White Sox. Paul Sewald for the Mariners. He threw a perfect 9th inning for his 9th save now, Sunday, and he has 5 of the team's past 6 in a span of under 2 weeks. So I kind of feel like Paul Sewald's just the guy. We've gotten burned pinning that to anybody in the Mariners bullpen the past 2 years, but this is some consistent usage for Sewald. For the Reds, Hunter Strickland.
Really good time for the Scout White Dynasty League for me. So happy about that. Yeah.
Hunter Strickland for the Reds. He blew a save Sunday, allowing 2 home runs. He had converted the previous 3 saves, but he has a 5.40 ERA. Lucas Sims has been rolled out for the year, so he's not coming back, but Alexis Diaz could be back by the end of next week, and I still think he's the preferred option there in fantasy, even if Strickland has been seeing more consistent save chances recently. And then finally for the Rays, Jason Adam got a save on Sunday. He struck out the only 2 batters he faced. There was a 4-run lead. He entered after a run had already been let in the 9th inning. So it wasn't like a traditional save situation. And so I don't know that Jason Adam is the front runner there for saves, but with a 1.44 ERA, 0.7 whip, 10.1 K per 9, I kind of feel like Jason Adam should be. And in those deeper leagues, I remain interested in him. All right. Let me see if I could spotlight just a couple other things real quickly that we had to pass over here. Let's see here. So one pitching performance worth mentioning is, let's see here. George Kirby struck out 9 in 7 innings against the Athletics, allowed only 1 run on 3 hits, 15 swinging strikes, but 10 of them were on the fastball, so that remains the go-to pitch for him. Tyler Anderson, remember we were worried about him and the changeup usage going down and it becoming less effective. Well, that completely reversed on Saturday against the Padres. He got 7 whiffs on the changeup, also 7 on the cutter. So he was missing plenty of bats, then only 1 earned run in 6 1/3 innings. You got something, Chris?
No, I think it was a very good sign from Anderson that he got that changeup and cutter working, and I think those are probably the 2 most important pitches for him. Obviously, the changeup has been incredibly important for him this season, so good to see. I remain skeptical moving forward. You know, I had moved him up pretty aggressively. He's more in like the 50 range at starting pitcher now, and I think that's probably where I'll stick with him moving forward.
Lance Lynn had his best start since returning, and it was at San Francisco. No earned runs in 6 innings, only 3 hits allowed, 15 strikeouts, only 8 whiffs on 104 pitches. But remember, he had 23 whiffs in his previous start. So I think Lance Lynn continues to trend the right direction. Carlos Carrasco had a good start Sunday against the Rangers, 8 strikeouts in 5 2/3 innings, only 1 earned run allowed, 20 swinging strikes on 102 pitches for him. I'm finding Carlos Carrasco pretty baffling this year and frustrating and like never sure when I can use him.
Yep.
But it's nice to see this is still in there and he might be worth holding on to for that. I guess I could say the same for Blake Snell completely. He struck out 12 at the Dodgers Friday. Of course, lasted only 5 innings, 4 walks, but overall it was a good start. I know I can't trust Blake Snell, but it starts like these that make you think, you know, maybe he's not completely droppable. I don't know. Where are you on Carrasco and Snell, Chris?
I wouldn't drop either of them. I think both have shown enough upside this season that I definitely can't bring myself to drop them, but obviously, look, it's frustrating going for either of them, and I don't feel confident starting either of them. Like Blake Snell, the one league that I have him in is Tout Wars. I haven't started him. Honestly, I'm not sure I've started him all season in that league with the way that team's gone. And Carrasco, I'm going to need to see a few more. I mean, the thing with Carrasco specifically is like, there hasn't been much in the underlying data to suggest one way or the other, like when things are going well or when things are going poorly. There hasn't really been a lot to point to and say, well, that's why it's happening. And so that kind of like randomness of it just makes it even more frustrating, because it'd be one thing if I could look at it and say, all right, his changeup's not working or his fastball velocity's down or something there, but it just hasn't really been the case with Carrasco. It's just been kind of the underlying under the hood stuff has been fairly consistent, and the results just have been all over the place. So I don't know.
To stream or not to stream, Monday, we got Patrick Corbin coming off that 12 strikeout effort. He's going against those Marlins who strike out a lot against left-handers, right? Dane Dunning is at Baltimore, Zach Plesac at Detroit, Hunter Green against the Mets, Chris Flexen at the Padres, and Dylan Bundy at the White Sox. I think my favorite here, and it's always dangerous to say it, is Zach Plesac. Got a nice quality start streak going. He's got the worst lineup in baseball. I feel okay about that one. The others, it's a real stretch. Maybe
Corbin was good against the Marlins. Corbin did have 8 strikeouts in 6 innings with 2 earned runs allowed the first time he faced the Marlins this season. They've been bad against lefties this season, so it wouldn't stun me if he was good. It wouldn't stun me if Dane Dunning was good. It's a good matchup in a good park, but I think Hunter Green's the most interesting of this group.
Yeah, well,
for
sure,
the long term, but
he could
using
get
him
you
against
9
the Mets,
strikeouts potentially, or he could get rocked by the Mets lineup.
So yeah, I'm okay with Plesac being the best streamer there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Tuesday, we got Nick Lodolo returning from injury against the Mets. Jose Quintana against the Yankees. Good luck with that. Jeffrey Springs at Boston. So remember, he missed his last start because of a family medical emergency, but he's coming back to face the Red Sox on Tuesday. Alex Wood at Arizona and Yusei Kikuchi at Oakland. I think even with that tough matchup against the Red Sox, Springs is still the pitcher I'd most likely trust of this group, but there are some good matchups for some of those others. Who do you got, Chris?
I do say Kikuchi in this one.
All right. He did have a good start last time. Let's see if he can keep it going. I don't think Chris and I can keep this going. We're looking forward to Frank being back on Wednesday. And we hope you all have a great 4th of July. We will be celebrating as well. And we will catch you next time on Fantasy Baseball Today.